Hey, what's going on? I'm Joey Sutson. I have Rusty Shelton with me. Now, first 10 seconds, I know I have to get your attention. So thanks for watching. If you click the button on LinkedIn or YouTube, check this out. Rusty spoke at Harvard at the age of 23. So as a keynote speaker, you might think ego's in the room, but I just want you to know Rusty's a servant leader, and I have the honor to connect with him on LinkedIn because his book, he and Adam Whitty wrote a book called The Authority Advantage that really changed my entire perspective on that throw up in your mouth experience when thought leaders are constantly putting content out there in the world just to always talk about themselves and looking like they are just the world's greatest. Want to really briefly read your background, if that's okay, Rusty. I know you wanted me to be brief. You have spoken to Young Presidents Organization. You've spoken and interacted with Forbes. You're the chief marketing and overseeing marketing strategy at Forbes Books. You're partnering and founding an organization that is blazing the trail with Forbes Books. So I want to ask you, Rusty, with all that success, do you have any funny stories, maybe about your golfing experience, anything that makes people laugh?
Well, I was looking at the commenting on the golf course behind you there, and yeah, I'll take you back to maybe my most embarrassing experience on the golf course. So I played on the high school golf team at Anderson High School here in Austin, Texas, and my junior year, I've been playing pretty well. I was starting to feel like, you know what, I may have a future here in golf, and was playing in a golf tournament, and it was one of those days, Joey, where just like everything that could go wrong went wrong. Bad bounces, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm on the 16th hole. I'm way over par and kidding my group right after I hit a shot that should have ended up pretty good. Got a bad bounce, went in the water. Kid was like, man, Rusty, this kind of day you get a hole in one. And, I sort of brushed it off. Well, anyway, I get up on the tee on 17 and damn, I got a hole in one right there, first shot. And it's pretty amazing. At that moment, I was excited. Afterwards, I just wanted to crawl under a rock. So it was one of those high school tournaments where they put the scorecards up real big, and right next to my name, they wrote hole in one and just like made it really flashy. Well, right next to that, I shot a 99. So the only reason I actually broke 100 was I got one of my two hole in ones that day. So I still get a hard time about that from some of my high school buddies, but plenty of embarrassing moments on the golf course through the years, but that was near the top.
I love that. It's so awesome to be able to not take yourself so seriously, but really take your relationships, your business seriously. That's awesome. I love that. I actually have a quick story about golf too. My father-in-law, first time golfing, took me, and I never really played golf. So anybody out there that's listening, okay, I'm tuning out. I never played golf or maybe sports. This is just funny. Took lessons, and I always played other sports and never really played golf. So when I got a driver after my lessons, it was a very expensive driver my father-in-law let me use. So I was trying to impress him. And when you're young and you want to look great in front of people, like many people do today, they always want to look great, but you don't have that genuine connection or really know what you're doing. I tried to impress him. So I hit the ball. I didn't even listen to the pro talk about technique and flow. And the club face went further than the ball. And to make matters worse, they rented another club and I did it twice in a row. Rusty, everybody needs a mulligan in life. And I just really love that story. Thank you for sharing.
So, Joey, did you actually break two clubs in a row? Is that what you're saying? Like the club head went further out?
Yes,
It's
yeah,
impressive.
Rusty. I did twice in a row, and I was really embarrassed. And honestly, humility has always been a value of mine because let's just be honest, in life, and especially when you're writing books and you're speaking to people, you have to be genuine today and not try to look perfect all the
No
time. So
doubt.
love it, love it. Hey, want to get to your book? You and Adam Whitty. I mean, really, this book really changed my perspective, and I'll tell you why. Today, so many people, even on LinkedIn, I watch and I study great leaders. I've been influenced by reading many great books, but I've always taken the back seat when it came to maybe my gifts, maybe speaking or promoting my brand, because I didn't want to come across looking like I was an egomaniac. And so I tended to sit in the back and I never really spoke up. And honestly, today we're so focused on all this platform influence, and I never really could express why servant leadership is actually an authority and why more than ever we need to take ego and put it out of the way, as you speak about, and really talk about the importance of being genuine and also not always focusing on your own content. So I know you wrote the book for servant leaders. Do you want to share a little bit about why you and Adam wrote the book?
Absolutely, yeah, Joey. I think you hit it on the head right there. As Adam and I were, we're kind of looking at the sort of leaders that we respect. Servant leaders focused on impact, focused on over delivering for their team, for their clients, for their partners. When we would talk about the importance of getting visible and accelerating trust for their business, what we found consistently was many of those servant leaders, you know, they've been conditioned, just like Adam and I were for many years, that if you're going to be a servant leader, you're going to be entirely behind the scenes. You're going to have your head down. You're going to be over delivering for your team, your clients, and your partners. And by the way, those are table stakes for good leadership. Of course, you've got to over deliver for your team members, for your clients. But in today's landscape, if that's all you're doing, if you're taking kind of that significant backseat to the corporate brand, you are really limiting your impact for your organization. And here's why. We're in an environment today. Gallup did a big study in 2022 that said trust in institutions, trust in businesses, trust in nonprofits is at an all-time low. And so if you have a message to get out and you are trying to communicate that message through your corporate brand, through your institutional brand, you've got an audience that's more skeptical than they've ever been, right? They don't want to hear from the business or the entity because they don't trust it the way that they used to. And so where we are today is we, as the public, increasingly, we're wanting to push the media out of the way. We're wanting to push companies and institutions out of the way. And we want to learn from leaders that we see as authentic, as mission driven, and most importantly, as trustworthy. And so I think the big thing for us, Joey, what we were trying to do with this book more than anything, we kind of sum it up in the subtitle. So building thought leadership focused on impact, not ego. And here's the difference here. I think for a lot of leaders, when they hear us talk about thought leadership or personal branding, for many of them, their minds immediately go to people that are building, hey, look at me kind of brands, or something that comes across as an ego stroke. And to your point, there's certainly plenty of people doing that. What Adam and I are advocating for is actually for leaders to come out from behind that corporate brand and not go out in front of or instead of the business. What we're advocating for is come out alongside it. Because if you've got a message to get out, if you as the leader are willing to be the messenger, not the message, if you're willing to be the messenger, it's going to go further, quicker, cheaper, more effectively, and it's going to help a lot more people, including your business, your team members, and your partners.
No, that's so excellent. That was awesome. Thank you for summing that up. Because I remember reading that the first time about your personal brand and why it's important to take authority and not always sit in the back because of the trust factor. People today aren't trusting businesses with so many layoffs and so many things going on today. It's important to not be the message. And so ego has to get out of the way, just like it says, focus on impact and not ego, but being the messenger. So sharing success. Being able to demonstrate that your company really has great people that are genuine and not just putting on that fake facade, that perfection that I just have all the answers. I want to ask you, why do you feel so many today get stuck with you focused content that you write about in the book?
Yeah, so I always, the analogy I like to use for content strategy, Joey, whether we're talking LinkedIn or podcast or blog, et cetera, is sort of levels up to what Adam and I call kind of your personal newspaper. And that's the analogy we like to go with. And what I find from a lot of leaders is typically the tendency is to either fill the newspaper with ads, meaning it's just overly promotional content, or the much more common mistake is to fill it with op-eds or opinion pieces, meaning it's the Rusty show again and again and again and again, right? And as a leader, if all you're serving up is your own content, your own stories, your own perspective, there's two problems with that. Number one, you're going to get bored pretty quick if all you're serving up are your own things, your own stories, et cetera. Number two, in my experience, Joe, it's a really slow grind in terms of growth, because as you get started, we may not have enough people yet that know to pay attention to just your content. And so what I find from a lot of leaders is like, hey, Rusty, I gave this a try. I gave it 4 months or I gave it 6 months, and I didn't get very far, and I'm not really sure it's working. And almost every time, Joey, when I go take a look, the reason it's not working is because all they're serving up are just kind of their own stories and their own perspective. And so you saw us talk a little bit in the book about the importance of really going with 3 categories of content. So the first one is you-driven content. So that's your intellectual property. That's your perspective. And as you know, Joey, you've done this really well from my perspective. Just the more vulnerable and self-deprecating that you're willing to be with that content, the better it's going to perform and the more rapport you're going to build with your audience. Category 2 is news-driven content. So David Meerman Scott, who's on our board at Forbes Books, calls this newsjacking, but this is taking what's in the broader news cycle, what we know, your target audience is paying attention to. Maybe they're excited about it, maybe they're anxious about it, and you're providing perspective or analysis on that, how they should react to it or think about it. And then third category is what we're doing right now, which is relationship-driven content. And that is using your platform on LinkedIn or a podcast or a blog as a way to essentially curate content from other people and use it as a way to facilitate peer-to-peer interactions. One of the stories we tell in the book, Joey, one of our biggest clients is one of the fastest growing regional banks here in the state of Texas. And you walk in the door to the downtown branch for this bank, and it's all the stuff you would expect from a modern bank branch. The thing that stands out, you turn to the right, there's a podcast studio built into this bank branch. And the bank president hosts that podcast. And unlike every other bank in Austin, which is trying to do biz dev and relationship building the same old way, hey, can we grab drinks? Or I'd love to take you to play golf. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the most commoditized way that exists to try to generate an interaction. Well, what Keystone Bank does here in Austin is instead they use that podcast as a way to put a spotlight on their customers, on their investors, on leaders in Austin. And it facilitates a peer-to-peer interaction with that leader or that center of influence. But also along the way, it's giving value to their audience and it's empowering that person with something to share, with something to put out on their LinkedIn, et cetera. So, I think for leaders that are watching this, probably one of the key questions is what you hit on, which is, all right, if I'm going to get active, what should I talk about? And I think the best mix is to have kind of an even split among those 3.
Yeah, that's brilliant. A quick story, success story. I was moved and inspired when I'm in my inspiration zone. I write a lot about real life inspiration for leaders, and because so much influence, elitism, and it causes boredom and burnout, and people are constantly going through this cycle that I've experienced. And when I read your book and I read about news-driven content and others, that's what I love to do. That's my inspiration. I love sharing success of other people. I love bringing out the brilliance of others. So if I'm facilitating or speaking, I always enjoy connecting with the audience because they smell if you believe in them. If you need something from the audience, they can tell. And that changed my life. And it made me step out and write about my book and create that newsletter, Real Life, on LinkedIn. And it's been growing. My LinkedIn platform has grown to 12,000 followers. The subscriber base, the people who are subscribing, I get more excited when I read the roles and the backgrounds of the people who are following my messages, not my message, because they're the message. Right. And you taught me to do that. And honestly, President Zelensky is in my book, The News-Driven Content, because he inspired me. Because he wasn't just there to get a ride. He could have left. The U.S. even offered to give him a ride when that war broke out with Russia, when they invaded Ukraine. And Zelensky said, I need bullets, not a ride. And the inspiration factor, he wasn't looking for influence. And honestly, writing about so many inspirational leaders like that has changed my life. So I want to thank you. That content has really helped my life, but it's also helped me achieve some goals along the way and have a little fun.
Well, dude, you